Welcome back to another Journey on the Fly podcast, and thank you so much for joining us. Before I get into our guest, I just want to remind everybody that the Journey on the Fly podcast can be found on all the best and popular podcast sites such as iHeart, Google, iTunes. iTunes, it takes a while for it to get up there, and we just resubmitted a podcast there, so it may not be showing up, but you can also go to www.journeyonthefly.fish. Yes, friends, .fish. Pretty awesome, huh? And you can listen to them there because we post them as they come up on our website. I also want to mention that we are a full-service, insured, and licensed guide service in the state of Pennsylvania, also working on some other areas of the country at the moment. We have relationships with nearly 30 Airbnbs and Verbos in our area and amongst the state of Pennsylvania. Check out the website and let us know what you think. And let's get at this, right? So tonight, I'm going to be talking to Richard Steinhart. Richard builds custom fly rods. And there isn't too many really cool jobs in the world. And I want to say, I'm jealous this guy has one. And we're going to learn about his history and his life in fly fishing and how do you make rods and all those kinds of questions that come up in a good conversation, which is our intent to have that tonight. So stay tuned and let's get at it. So Rich, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up in the Pittsburgh area actually, and I think I've been fly fishing since I was 5 years old. My dad and uncle, but my dad was an avid fly fisherman from day one, and got into it. And we spent most of our time fly fishing on the central PA streams, State College, Spring Creek, and then also over in the Carlisle area. We had some relatives that lived over there. So we spent a lot of time there. And it was just what we did. And so I went to school, actually. Kind of a funny story. I applied to two colleges, Pitt and Penn State, and got accepted to Pitt at first and was all excited about that. And then Penn State acceptance came in, and my parents went around telling everybody I was going to Penn State because that meant they had more time to go up there. My dad had more time to go up there and go fishing. So I ended up going to Penn State. Just what a great experience that was to spend all that time on the streams. And but yeah, I'm 55 years old, and like I said, I've been fly fishing since I was about 5. I've, off and on, I've taken some breaks in there for as life gets in the way, but more recently I've been back at it avidly, and then started the rod building about 2.5 years ago, and it's just been something I thought was going to be something I did just as a hobby. It's turned into a full-time gig. So that's a summary in a nutshell, I guess.
Well, I appreciate you sharing it. It's pretty funny. So that's hilarious that Penn State was like your parents' school.
Yeah,
I can understand that because my son's 14, fortunate enough to have raised him in a fishing household. Mom dabbles in it very, very, very little, but so I'm always envious of guys and women like yourself that are raised in a very outdoorsy type of family that find a lot of time on the stream, and dad took you, and it's incredibly important. I said this to an interview earlier, that the same scenario, and it's funny how it seems to push people in a natural way into the world of fly fishing. Organically, they find themselves working in it and as a vocation at some level. So it's really, really cool. And even if they don't, the fact that you enjoy it from such a small age to where you are today, and it just stuck with you, and probably for a lot of good reasons. So you mentioned rod building, which is how I know you, mainly from Ant's Rods.
Yes.
Where did that come from? That's just an interesting name altogether.
So when I started, I've dabbled in building rods and doing repairs of rods off and on from back when I was a teenager. I put new guides on a rod for myself. But back when COVID hit, I was looking for something to do to keep busy. And I thought, well, I'll build a rod. And I built it, and I was like, oh, this is fun. So I said, well, I'm going to try to sell it. And I think I put it on eBay and I lost money on it, but sold it. But then started getting some feedback. And I said, well, told my wife, I said, maybe I'll make a few. And even if I don't sell them, I'll donate them to, you know, Project Healing Waters or something like that. But as it started to take off, I said, I need to think about a name for this business. And I mentioned my dad, probably 40 years ago or more. He invented probably the first foam body fly back then and sold it in half a dozen fly shops in the state, up there in Volant, and State College. And just something for him to do as a hobby. He's always inventing stuff. And he he gave himself the nickname Mr. Ants because he called the flies instant ants and crickets. And he got one of the first Pennsylvania, what do you call it, license plates that had you could actually put words on. He got the plate Mr. Ants. So probably, I don't even know how long ago now it was, an author wrote a book called Intelligent Trouting. And in the book, there's a chapter called "Will the Real Mr. Ants Please Stand Up?" And there was a story about him and another gentleman that created what was called the McMurray ant at the time, which was made out of balsa wood. And there was a chapter about the two of them, and there was actually a caricature sketch of my dad in there. And if you go on my Facebook page, you see this picture. So I was thinking about it. My dad passed away a few years ago, so I decided to, in his honor, name them Mr. Ants rods. And it's just kind of caught on. And I put this caricature sketch just on the back of my business card, and it's on the Facebook page. And so it's just really, he took pride in what he did and the flies he tied and the flies he sold at the different shops and everything. And so I kind of try to take the same pride in what I do with the rods.
That is such an awesome story. Very seldomly do you hear that much depth behind why I named what I named my business, and that is fantastic. That's something that will last forever, no matter how it goes up and downs with economy and fishing and things. It's just really really cool. And just for a word for a side note for any of the moms and dads that are out there listening, this is one more example of good parenting and a beautiful relationship that is still producing fruit in this world. And so get your kids outside, as biased as we
Definitely.
are, get a fly rod in their hands.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
just I want to take a step back a little bit because you did mention you went to Penn State. So what did you go to Penn State for? That just interests me personally.
Yeah, well, I ended up graduating with a civil engineering degree. Actually, stayed on and got a master's degree in civil engineering, and then went on to basically work for consulting firms. Started in Erie, Pennsylvania, then over into Ohio for a while before moving back to this area, into Pittsburgh. I know I'm saying this area, Pittsburgh area, and ran the last up until about 6 years ago. I worked for the last 16 years prior to that for an international firm running their engineering business in this region. So I had like 125 people in 7 offices in 3 states, and we just did a lot of public infrastructure projects, mostly, and some environmental work for the coal industry and the gas industry as well. And then about 6 years ago, I decided that I was tired of the that lifestyle, I guess, of just chasing one job after another, and decided to start my own consulting business, just doing basically helping small businesses with their business needs, whatever that be, whether it be marketing or business, financial planning, things like that as relates to running their businesses. And I started that about 6 years ago, this coming February. And about halfway through that, COVID hit. And the business died for that time because no one, we're shut down and everything. And that's when I started messing around with building the rods and selling them. And I never look back and do this 7 days a week, 10 hours a day now when I'm not and it doesn't feel like work. You know, it's fun and it's enjoyable, and you don't make a lot of money at it. No rod builder makes a lot of money. You basically could make more money if you were working at the local fast food place, but the interaction with all the customers and the people that I've met over the last 2.5 years is priceless. So that's why I do it.
So the reason that I asked you that, and I mentioned that it was personal, I kind of want to make it more public because of I've not had, and this is not a woe is me story. I just it's just the facts. So I haven't had that. Um, everybody says, "Well, who introduced you to fly fishing?" Well, it was a frustration with not being able to cast like Jimmy Houston did with his bait caster. Not to mention, I couldn't grow hair like he could either. And I returned the reel and I bought a fly rod, and so there's a lot of frustration built because there was no, mentorship, and to be honest, I didn't seek it out. So then you get to where I'm at now in my stage of life, which age wise I'm not very far behind you, and I get frustrated because I want to do this and I want to do that, and I have education behind me, but it's not anywhere near in a realm that ever generates good income. But I loved it, and I'd do it again if I had to. And just entering a new stage of my life, kind of making a decision to take a couple of my passions and join them together, just reminds me of how you're kind of doing what you're doing today. Not quite the exact road, of course, that got you where you're at, but it encourages me. And making it public, I meant, is hopefully that encourages other people that, sometimes it's not always about the bottom dollar, and sometimes it's about having good peace of mind. And like you said, producing quality work and the interaction with people that just generates friendships, relationships, and joy that you give when somebody gets this amazing piece of craftsmanship and goes and catches their first fish and however many after that.
Well, I mean, I've had the struggles for basically the whole career of being successful, but not being happy on a day-to-day basis with what you're doing, and it has nothing to do with the company, the job, the people. It's just finding something that checks those boxes that for yourself, that says, okay, this gives you satisfaction. And everybody's got different circumstances. I have no children, not by design or anything. We love kids, love children, but just it didn't work out that way. So I'm in a position financially and whatnot that I'm able to take some chances and do some different things. And I'm fortunate for that, but you got to follow your own, everybody has to follow their own path and see where it takes them. And sometimes you have to take chances, and sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. But in my case, this seems to be, at least for now, seems to be working out good. And keeping me sane, if nothing else. That's the main at this point in time.
So you mentioned that you had even put a couple guides on when you were younger. Do you find yourself, would you classify yourself as a creative person, or just handy or crafty or something of that sort that kind of helps you along the road on putting these rods together? Because I know it's not easy. I mean, I've looked at doing things myself, and I'm a if it looks square, it's okay, but it's not actually square kind of a carpenter. So
Yeah, it's so funny because I'm not. I mean, historically, I'm a problem solver. I'm an engineer, so I'm a problem solver. I'm more of a business person, I guess. I always have been. Even when I was in the engineering business, I always said I couldn't really design my way out of a paper bag. I always ran the business side of the business. I knew enough to be dangerous, but I really was focused on the business side. So really wasn't an artsy or creative person from that perspective. But something just clicked with this. People ask me, do you tie your own flies? Well, I can, but I hate it. And my dad did it, I mean, all the time. And I still do a little bit, um, but for some reason, something with the rods, I think it's all those years of being in the engineering business. We had big projects and they seem to never end, and you seem to never have a finished product. Something was always, it was always the next job and next project. Where here I'm in as I get a rod. From when I start a rod till when I ship it out, it's maybe 4 or 5 days, and it's a finished product. That just that I guess that feeling of it being a finished product, something I can look at and say that, hey, I did that, is what it really is. Just check the box for me. This is something that I really enjoy doing. And but no, as far as being an art of trade, in fact, I still joke with the customers that I send them all my options: reel seats, grips, thread wrap colors, and I probably got 50 different threads now. And they'll ask me questions about it, and I say, well, let me bring in my color consultant. So I get my wife to come down, and we look at the colors and go from there. And she kind of gives her recommendations, and so that's usually how if somebody doesn't have a combination in mind, that's usually how it comes about. Is I go to her, default to her, because she's got the eye for it.
So, what does the process look? And you could be as detailed or as vague about this as you want. From and actually from selecting the blanks that you want to produce, because I know that you are 100% about quality from what you mentioned, and obviously what I've seen you produce. But I was interested to see what blanks that you're predominantly using, which are the Diamondback blanks, if I'm correct. You seem to produce a lot of those.
Those have been the flavor of choice, I guess, lately.
Okay.
They're great rod. They've been out, just been out for not that long, and there's been a lot of positive feedback, both for the factory rod that's been out longer, and then now that the blanks are available, the custom rods that I'm building. But actually, there's different levels, and I that's what I try to provide. So I import some blanks for people that are looking for more of an entry level point. I import some blanks directly from overseas and have those here, and can produce those at a lower cost. But they're still quality rods. In fact, I fish. Most of my rods are still built on those blanks.
Mm-hmm.
And the feedback that I've gotten on those are excellent as well. But then, as you go along, you get folks that have had maybe an Orvis Clearwater, or something on that line that's what I'd call more of an entry level to mid level rod, and they're great rods. They can be a great rod, but they want to step up to the next level. And really, the question is, what are you getting for that incremental increase in price? Depending on how incremental it can be significant, and it just depends on what you're looking for. A lot of times it has to do with weight of the rod. They put a little more money into the process of building the blank, so you get a little bit lighter blank out of it. Sometimes it's a little more sensitivity, or just the way it's made is a little bit different. But there are quality blanks at all price levels, and I think that you have to find what fits your style and what your needs are. I remember growing up, when we were fly fishing, we were buying our rods. We found one of the local department stores, or not even departments, what do you call them? Convenient, like it would be equivalent to a Walmart. I forget what it was back in the day, Hills or something like that. Lama glass graphite rods, which at the time you never heard of Lama glass. We were getting them for like $30-$40 for a rod, and that's what we were using, and they were fantastic rods. So I think it goes a lot into how the rods are made, the process, and the and how they match up with your casting style, and the type of fishing that you want to do with it. So I build rods from, I think my baseline rod that I build in glass or graphite is somewhere in the $275 range, up to I'm now building on Thomas and Thomas blanks, which those factory Thomas rods retail for $895. So I build on all of them, and it's about matching up with the customer what they want. And so I have a series of questions I go through if somebody doesn't know specifically what they want, and I'll get everything. I'll get a question about, how much does your products cost? Well, we have to start with what kind of rod are you looking for? Is it a Euro rod? Is it a dry fly rod, small stream, steelhead? Is this your first one? If not, have you been looking at brand name big brand names so that we can sort of do a comparison, and so we'll walk through the process. And frankly, I enjoy that as much, if not more, than building the rod is walking through that process with every customer. A lot of them become friends as I go through the process.
That's interesting to hear you say a couple of those things because one of my jobs is I work at a fly shop, and trying to match fly rods to people is more important to me because I'm not a very good salesman. It's more important for me to match that rod to the person than it is to match that person's budget to the rod
Right.
sometimes because they have that. And I mentioned this on another interview that I did. There's that scene in Christmas Vacation, since we happen to be in the season. Then I use this analogy all year long, though, where they're out searching for the Christmas tree, and all of a sudden the heavens open up and the light shines down, and Chevy Chase's character knows that that's the tree. And putting rods in people's hands and them casting them and stuff like that, they get that. They just sometimes their eyes literally will bug out and look at me because they feel such a big difference from one to the next as far as flex and weights and whatnot go with the different rods. So it's cool to get to work through that with somebody literally from ground zero on your end, building a rod that will mean an awful lot to them the rest of their life because it's not off the store shelves. It's from your hands, and you're consulting back and forth in a sense with choices of components and colors and whatnot.
Yeah, it's really blown me away as far as what through the process and through the last 2.5 years, some of the discussions I've had with customers as far as looking for something to pass down to their kids as an heirloom, or something they want for their kids for a gift, and they want, because I can customize and put people's names on the rods, or sometimes people want to name the rod something, and just that whole process, and thinking about it, just kind of a whole different point of view that maybe I didn't have even before I started this, as far as, I guess, not partially because of not having any children of my own, but just thinking of that, and from the standpoint of how people actually put thought into some of this, and not just looking for a fishing rod to use, but something that's going to be around for a long time. And that just sometimes just blows me away when I have get some of that feedback or discussions from the customers.
That's awesome. So if my wife and son are listening, you'll get his contact information here towards the end. So, um, so when it comes to like kind of the baseline stuff from your perspective, building these rods over the years, even doing something as simple as replacing guides when you were younger. In that process, does the quality is there such a thing as quality of components, not including the blanks themselves, because you've clearly made that that is there's different qualities, different price ranges, whatever. But do the components themselves matter when it comes to putting a quality rod together, or is it just kind of, yeah, here's the guides I have?
I think that there's a couple different perspectives to that, and I think in some cases, my personal opinion is some of that gets blown out of proportion a little bit. But again, it's at the end of the day, you need something in your hands that you're going to be confident. Fishing's just like any sport, has a lot to do with confidence. And if you're confident with whatever your tools that you're using when you're out there, you got a better chance of being successful. So, I have my sort of standard guides, my standard reel seats, my standard grips that I carry and offer. But then I have customers that want to upgrade to, the most expensive guides that are out there, or the lightest guides that are out there. You're talking about 10 little guides or 12 little guides. I don't know that they make that much difference in the weight of the rod, but if that's what gives them confidence, then that's what I'll do for them. But I think that you just have to look at again, it's not so much about price or whatnot. You have to look at the different components and look at the quality. Certainly there's some added touches. You can get custom reel seats made, and I have a couple of vendors that I work with for those that people will want, and they're hand turned, and
Oh wow.
Um, and they look beautiful, and you get some really cool designs with them, either acrylic or some certain kind of woods. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of factors that go into the different components that you use. Certainly, you don't want to put anything out there that's not going to last, be durable. But that's, I guess, my first priority. Certain rods require different, uh, I guess, for example, Euro rods. You want something that's very sensitive because you're fishing basically with a lot of touch. And so I found that I'm using a lot of carbon fiber on the grips, for example, and they're lightweight and they just seem to feel, and it's not just my opinion, but I've gotten a lot of customer feedback that the feel through those grips just adds another level to it. But another thing is, for example, a lot of people will talk about, I get a lot of questions about, well, what's the weight of the rod? Well, I guess when you're doing a factory rod and all the components are always the same, you can come up with that. But literally, I have 10 different grips you can pick. And when you're talking about a rod, the total weight might be 3.1 ounces or 3.2 ounces. And two or three tenths of an ounce could be the difference between the carbon fiber grip and a cork grip with a lot of design in it that has a lot of epoxy probably built into it. I think it's more important about where sometimes that weight is added for the type of fishing that you're doing. So, for example, if you're going to be Euro fishing and you're also called high sticking, and you're going to have the rod up, you want more weight towards the grip and the handle. So maybe it doesn't matter if the rod's a little bit heavier if that's where the weight's at versus in the blank. So there's a lot of factors that go into what, in addition to just what the materials are being used, as far as what components you're going to add to the rod. And some of it's style. A lot of people love the style of some of the grips and different things that I offer, and I'll explain to them that's nice looking, but it's going to, just so you understand, it's going to add more weight to the rod. And some don't care, and some say, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Let's go with something else because I want a really lightweight rod. So there's just kind of a back and forth, but I try to provide a range of options to the customer so that they can really make it their own.
Which kind of voids this next question that I had, but I'm going to ask it anyways a little bit. When I had a question set up here about, do people choose, satin or non-gloss? Because I've heard stories of these incredibly serious competitive anglers in Romania and Poland and the UK, where they will, and I think it's a confidence thing. I'm assuming this, where they're taking steel wool and taking the finish off of the rod because they want no glare to inhibit, like, say, the sun hits it and the trout sees the glare or something, it spooks it. Which, fishing for wild trout, we both can say anything could spook those trout. Granting who was there before water clarity, but um, it seems like, though, every rod's
What?
a little bit different because everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah, I have people that want complete, blackout package on the rod because they want no color to it at all. Some of them don't even want, a label on the rod, which I won't do a rod without my Mr. Ants. I've actually turned people away because, as I talked earlier, how important the name of the rod or the business is to me. I just won't do a rod without my label on there. And I've actually turned people away because they say they don't want anything on there that's going to put glare onto the rod. Well, I can tell you, I was out last week and caught 70 fish in 70 wild trout in 5 hours. My rod's a Diamondback 10-foot, 10-inch 3-weight with um, almost a silver wraps on it. So, I don't think, I don't really think that I'm sure there's situations where the water, like you said, the clarity of the water and whatever, but I know that I probably make a lot more noise walking up through that stream than any rod glare is going to do, and scaring fish away. So, but again, it's confidence, and some people feel that way about it. And if that's the way they feel about it, I will, I'll do everything I can to put the rod together the way they want it. So when they walk out on the stream, they're confident that they're going to be able to catch fish with it.
Well said. Being that I work at a fly shop, you get this an awful lot, especially for steelhead season, because when they see these pictures of these fish and they go chasing them, they're so adamant. And I don't mean any disrespect. I just it's just how the world works in fly fishing and stuff. And I grant it, and it's fun. Where they're like, what flies are they hitting? And there's only a handful of flies that are really out there for steelhead. I mean, you got eggs, nymphs, streamers, and so forth. It's really the same gig in the other world of trout as there is there. But I try to say, well, let's pick a handful of these flies with different sizes and then try to concentrate on figuring out if they're drifting properly, because at the end of the day they're still trout, and if it doesn't look real, they're probably not going to take it as likely as they are the one that's making the better drift and the thing looks real as far as a really good drift. And it's all about confidence. It's all about that drift on the the I'm going to call it epoxy, but please correct me. The epoxy that you put over top of the wraps,
Yes.
is that, can you get that in a like a satin or a dull color? Because it always seems like they're always shiny on every rod that's built ever that I've ever seen.
You know what? I can't honestly say that I know the answer to that. I use basically, I found one, it's that process is a little bit of a tricky process. And I've had ones that didn't cure right and things like that. And so I've found something that works for me, and I basically stick with it and I don't mess with it. And so it's, yeah, it's kind of a glossy, but a lot of it depends on what's underneath. Like if you're putting a black wrap down and you put the gloss over it, that doesn't really, the epoxy over it, it doesn't really, shine out there or anything like that to a point that would affect anything, in my opinion. But I'm sure they're probably, I mean, I know that like some people will do silk wraps with a different kind of finish, and it shows the guides through. I've kind of kept my process simple. I do the simple wraps. I don't do the bands around on the outside of the wraps like some of the people do, and those are beautiful. I just have decided not about the most got a couple of different requests lately. I haven't built yet, but I've done a couple of rods where they wanted alternating guides, so color wise, so a silver and a purple, or a purple and I don't know. I've got one that's going to be a coming up. I'm going to do with there must be I think they're West Virginia fans. So it's going to be a blue and a gold wrap. Every other guide, it's going to be blue and gold. But I don't. So to get back to the epoxies and things like that, I can't honestly say whether there are or not things that cure that aren't going to be shiny.
Okay, I just curious. And these are the kinds of conversations that help me get past some of these silly things. Silly to me, but to customers and people that need that for confidence. That's a different story. So we're kind of rounding this up a little bit. Do you have a favorite fishing story? One that seems to stick out from your past or currently? That's a bunch of fish that you just caught, and that's a good day on the stream. So
No, I think the funny, not the funny thing is, but what I remember most is, and so I'm a pretty laid back guy, but I'm also kind of quiet competitive. I also golf, and so I have some friends that I golf with a lot, and you know, we play for $10 or whatever for a match, and they always joke that if there's $4, if there's $2 on the line, that I'm going to be grinding till the very end. And it's not about the $2, obviously it's about the competition, but that comes from growing up. I remember, my dad had 5 weeks vacation, and we spent every weekend and all 5 weeks vacation on the streams. And I remember one year where we spent over 80 days. We lived in Pittsburgh, and we spent over 80 days on streams in the central PA area alone. So we were very competitive. So I'd go one way, he'd go another way, my uncle would go another way, and we come back a couple hours later for sandwich or whatever. And it's, how many did you get? Oh, I got 25. Oh, I got 22. Oh, I only got 15. I got to get back out there. It was just that fun competition that kind of drove it, and that was basically the trips that I remember. Plus the one scary trip where we were going in February. It was supposed to be nice, and we got to the top of the mountain over there, and the roads were solid ice, and we started sliding down the mountain, and thought we were gonna. I was sleeping in the back of the car and woke up and thought we were gonna be going over the edge until we bounced off the snow mounds, and we still went on to fish that weekend up there in State College. So, we were pretty diehard when you came down to it.
Oh, I love that. Well, before I ask you these final two questions, give everybody how do we find you for Facebook, Instagram, your website, any of that kind of stuff? Because I want people to overwhelm you with with traffic and inquiry and hopefully rod building in a good way. Not that you grow to hate it, but it just continues to thrive for you.
It's simple. I have a Facebook page. It's at Mr. Ants Rods, all one word. The at symbol, Mr. Ants Rods, and I post pictures of every rod I've ever built out there. I post some pictures when I go fishing of the fish that I caught, just to show that I'm out there using the tools, and that's the easiest way. I mean, on there you'll see I basically, what I do is I work through Facebook Messenger most of the time, because that way I send all the options through there to the customer that they can pick their grips and whatnot, and then I have a record when I'm ready to build the rod I can go back to and just confirm what we talked about and selected. So I kind of work through there. Get a lot of requests for a website, but I'm so busy right now with building rods, I really don't even have time to keep it up to date, even if I had one, because things are changing. Components that I have change every once in a while. And so to be able to keep all that up to date to a point where it would really benefit anybody, I found that it's easier just to work through the Facebook page and the messenger. But I think on my Facebook page, my cell phone number's on there too. I'm always happy to talk to people or work with text messages if that works better for them. And they can find all that information on the Facebook page.
Everybody that hears this, at least go find Mr. Ants Rods and like the page, because you're going to love seeing everything that he's producing. So one more question, two-part question, Rich. What is the best, and if you don't feel pressure on this, if you don't have one or the other, that's fine, but what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given for life and for fly fishing?
So for life, I listened to a set of CDs probably 15, 20 years ago of a speaker that's really sort of driven how I try to treat people. Everybody's heard of, I'm sure, the golden rule: treat others like you would like to be treated. And that's a great rule, but what if I don't like to be treated the same way as you do? So this gentleman came up with the platinum rule, which says treat others as they would like to be treated. And what that basically means is you have to get an understanding of what the person that you're dealing with styles are, communication wise, interests, whatnot, and then you adjust your way to meet theirs and treat them the way they want to be treated. And so I've just tried to practice that in everything that I've done since that time. I've actually when I started my consulting business, I went and got certified in the whole process of teaching that. And it's just something that I'll always remember and follow. So that's kind of the thing for life. For fly fishing, I've always been a numbers guy. I've always been about how many, because I told you our competition, how many do you catch? But I will say now that I'm out there fishing more, and especially after catching a 22-inch wild brown the other day, that size does matter. That's just. But yeah, it's no, it's for fly fishing. It's really about. It's hard for me because everybody says it's about being on the stream and enjoying your time out there, and it is. I pulled into a parking spot yesterday, looked through the trees as I was getting out of the car, and saw a bald eagle flying away, which was the most amazing thing I've seen. But so you're supposed to enjoy those, and it's hard for me sometimes because I drive 4 hours round trip to fish, and I've got maybe, especially this time of year, maybe 5 hours because I don't really like to be on the road in the dark when the deer are out running around so much. So I maybe got 5 hours, and it's about, from at that time, it's about catching as many fish as I can in that 5 hours time. So it's hard for me just to sit back and sort of smell the roses and enjoy it, but that's really, really what you need to do, because it's just a blessing to be able to be out there and do that.
I love it. I appreciate you sharing this. I'm going to ask one more question because I know my buddy Dirk's going to be listening. So that big brown that you caught, what did you
Yeah.
catch him on? What fly did you use?
It was an egg,
It was an egg. So not a
yeah,
hopper.
not a hopper.
This is a little inside joke I have to share with you later with one of my coworkers that he's gone out west a bunch of times. He's loved with Montana and Wyoming and all that, and so he's a hopper dropper guy. So it's this ongoing joke that he just doesn't know how to nymph fish, and that's why he isn't catching big fish on nymphs.
That's the wild brown. I mean, I got a 20-incher early there spring, and that's the biggest wild trout I've gotten. And believe me, my heart was pounding the whole time I was trying to fight that fish. But yeah, I don't think too many hoppers this time of year in central Pennsylvania. That's
All right. Well, you all heard it from there, from the mouth of the man catching the fish. Well, Rich, thank you incredibly for your time and everything you shared. It was very, very encouraging and helpful to me and insightful into the world of this. And so we'll catch you on Facebook, and maybe sometime we'll run into each other on the stream. You get up to Newcastle Way or whatever, or look me up. We'll hit the Neshannock. The stockies aren't quite as good as the wild fish are, but at the end of the day, fishing's fishing if you can get on them. So
that's right. Sounds good. Yeah, let me know. I'd love to get together and fish a little bit together.
All right.
All right. Well, I'll say one last thing.
Go for it.
Go Pens. And
Absolutely.
I appreciate the opportunity.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Ant's Rods. What a cool story. A story that I hope inspires many of you that it's never too late to do what you love. And it's not always about the bottom dollar. If you can set yourself up in a way to make things work out. Take the time, stretch your legs, take your passions and figure them out. Because in my view, it only makes sense from the two stories I've heard so far that in ancient terms, there is a teleos, a purpose in which we are all meant to fulfill. And all of our journeys, hopefully, in them we will discover what that is. So I hope you enjoy these. Till the next time, keep your lines wet and in the fish's mouth. God bless.